I come with a warning, and that is that I am a little bit passionate about rubbish. And it hasn't always been like this. You know, like my introduction, back in 2008, I decided that I wanted to do something about my waste. I had a New Year's resolution. In fact, I had 20 New Year's resolutions. I was turning 40. And when you get to 40, you've got quite a long way to go. There is that tendency when you've got that big birthday, that you look at yourself and you think, there's something I actually need to change. And I looked at rubbish and I thought, yeah, actually, we're throwing too much. I tell you the sign when you're throwing too much away is when you're actually doing this with the bin bag to get it out for bin day. And also, you're chasing the bin lorry up the road in your slippers. It's not a good look. Now, I probably would have been left to my own devices and not here today if it wasn't for a friend saying to me, Karen, there's a Zero Waste Week coming up in March. I'm doing it. I think you should too. It sounds just up your street if you want to reduce your waste. And I thought, a Zero Waste Week? That sounds impossible. But I wanted to reduce my rubbish. There was an answer at hand. The local council were offering this challenge, so I signed up for it. And we had 7 weeks to actually get ready for the event itself for Zero Waste Week. So what I did was I looked at what we were throwing out. I became the community champion only because I'd had my arm twisted. Apparently they were after somebody who was pretty average. And they actually told me I was average. I'm still trying to work out if it was a compliment to this very day. But I guess I was, because I had a full wheelie bin of rubbish that we wheeled out every 2 weeks, despite actually recycling what I thought was pretty good. So I signed up to the challenge, and what we did was we went through all of the procedures of trying to hit that waste down, taking photos every 2 weeks. And I can tell you, I wasn't proud. I actually went out and took the photos in the dark. Well, not quite in the dark, but just at dusk and at dawn, because I didn't want people to think I was being geeky about that waste. But what I was proud about was how quickly that rubbish actually came down. From the full wheelie bin, 2 weeks later, it was very much half full, and it just kept going down and down and down until Zero Waste Week came, and all we threw out as a family of 4 was a sticking plaster. I still can't believe it myself to this very day. And that actually taught me 2 things. The first was, I'd been taking my rubbish for granted, and where I thought we could have no control over what we were chucking in our bin, that control and what we could do and the options actually empowered me. Secondly, I looked out into the wider world, what went beyond our bin. Because if I was recycling this stuff, if I was reducing waste, what I wanted to know was, what happens to all of this recycling that I actually send away? Is it being processed properly? So I suddenly became a bit of a rubbish groupie. While my friends were actually going out for coffee mornings or going back to work, I was hanging out with bin men, with waste professionals, attending conferences, finding out what was happening with plastics, like why can't half the country still not recycle a yogurt pot? And I got very, very interested and started challenging so many other people. And that's what I do to this very, very day. In 2014, we've now had around about, well over 1,000 people take the rubbish diet and actually see some great results from it. But you can't really experience the power of it until you've done it yourself. So what I'm going to do today, from this platform, where it's a privilege to be, is actually set you all a challenge. And that's when you go home, I want you to start thinking about the rubbish that is going in your landfill bin, or your energy from waste bin. And I want you to pick 5 of those top bin fillers that you know that you keep throwing away every week. Set a Zero Waste Week, and then try and reduce that down and eliminate those 5 bin fillers. There you go. Those are your instructions, and that's what I want you to go off and do now. Well, not quite now. Don't rush to listen to the rest of the talk. But over the next few weeks, if you're interested in giving this a go, trust me, you could get as geeky as me. And this is how you do it, because you have to stop thinking about objects like this as an object. That's an empty bottle that you just got to get rid of. I now look at that bottle and I think, whoa, polymer. That can actually turn into something else. I don't think about the act of just putting that in the bin. I think about the innovation that that can create and how that product and other materials can actually stimulate our economy. Because recycling at the moment is flatlining, and it's not through want of trying. There's still a lot of desire to actually have better recycling around the country, and more investment is needed. But we are still not putting a lot of this stuff in our bins. For example, in Suffolk, where I live, just over the border, I went to the landfill site yesterday. I told you I'm a bit geeky. If you've never walked on landfill, it is really an eye-opener, because when I live in a county where you can recycle all sorts of plastic, and you still see plastic bottles, plus other things, still buried in the ground, it is just like littering, but also that is a wasted material that's not being fed into the economy. And it costs a heck of a lot of money. In Suffolk, around about 9,000 tonnes of plastic is still buried in the ground, in landfill, every year, because people are not connecting that with their recycling. And that is costing the taxpayer in the region of around £800,000. And that is the back end of the problem. Money that could actually be given and directed to services that are actually being shut down within our counties. So you see, there is money actually locked in this from a disposal perspective. But also reinvigorating the manufacturing. Things are actually changing in the UK, around the world. And manufacturing has got higher ambitions these days. I was at an exhibition this week where I was talking to an aluminium can drinks beverage manufacturer who is actually raising the bar to set the future for what is this circular economy, trying to capture as much of this stuff that we create and pull it back in. Now, most aluminium cans create around about 50% recycled content. They are actually producing a sheet that now actually contains up to 90% recycled content. Now that actually, from a manufacturing point of view, is incredible. But they're not stopping there. By 2020, they want to push up to 100% recycling, or as close to that as they can possibly get. Now the thing here is, when all of those cans come into that processing, and they're actually recycled and reused through that, what we're actually doing is saving a heck of a lot of energy from producing the cans from the raw material. It varies on the material that you're using, but aluminium, which is infinitely recyclable, can actually save around about 95% energy of the same production from raw material. Now that, from an energy perspective, and the carbon associated with it, is huge. So that is where I really, really want our country to excel and to actually connect us with those recycling bins in a way that's never happened before. But the next challenge is, and this is what I get excited about as well, renovation, renovating your resources. Now, I've actually picked this word from a 1940s World War II handbook about how to renovate your clothes, which I thought it really struck a chord with me, because it was all about trying to preserve the resources, and it's still exactly the same today. We need to preserve all of those resources that we're moving into resource scarcity. And when you actually think about the recycling opportunities that we have, we are also now got so many mending, repair opportunities that are starting to poke up within our communities. And in fact, it's becoming the next key agenda in getting this stuff out of our bins, even out of recycling to a certain point, and into a different kind of local economy. The furniture reuse network, which is a massive, amazing network which allows furniture to be brought in, to be repaired, to then actually give to people who are facing poverty, collects around about 2.7 million items through their doors every year. And they estimate that what that creates is in the region of around about 4,000 jobs, 20,000 volunteer opportunities for upskilling those people, and it locks in a value of over 340 million pounds worth of kit and equipment, essential resources that can be passed over to around about 1 million families. Now that actually is something that applied to other things that we throw away, like electronics, could actually have a major impact. RAP, a research organisation, a communications organisation within this field, actually estimates that for all of those items, the 220 items that go to a recycling centre, electronic items, if those were actually diverted back into a reuse function, that could again stimulate an unlocking of around about 220 million pounds worth of value that can be shared elsewhere. And it's keeping hold of our resources. But sadly, around about a quarter of the stuff that actually goes to the recycling centres, that is actually still working. It's not even broken. Or even if it's not working, it's just a minor repair that increases that longevity. So when you've actually got a broken hairdryer or some other electronic gadget, it is worth actually seeing if it can be fixed before it goes through. Now, what I really get excited about, and my time is running out, is one of the most invigorating points of actually trying to focus on reducing your waste and taking the rubbish diet challenge. And that is, you get to the point where you've worked out what you can actually put through the innovation chain through your recycling locally, and you've looked at the repair options that are appearing locally, and the next thing is you look at the bin and you've actually still got waste that you've got to get rid of, and this is a powerful opportunity to really test your values and see how low you can go. Food waste, for example, isn't collected around much of the country. We don't have food waste collection where I live. So when I started looking at our waste, we actually still used to throw out a heck of a lot of rubbish that was actually food waste. And I don't mean food waste in terms of your your peelings that you put in a compost bin. This was stuff that was in packets that I'd already bought, gone off, and I'd actually throw it in the bin. I hadn't controlled our family lifestyle to cut that down. And half of our rubbish was actually food waste. But again, if you have an issue with food waste in your household, the value of what you could be throwing out could be, the average household food waste of around about £60 a month chucked in the bin. Now you can see why I use the word abate, because what I like to focus on is not just reducing your waste. I like to get people engaged with seeing how low they can go and really put it to the test. And in doing so, you start to see a real different benchmark in how you think about waste and how you're valuing resources. I had that full wheelie bin every 2 weeks. By the time I'd done my zero waste week and I'd actually recycled and done all that thing leading down to it and looked at every aspect of my waste, I was trying to find solutions that meant that we could not have any waste in that bin when we threw it out. And by the time the actual event came, all we threw out was a plaster. Now I can't sustain a plaster. Well, firstly, I don't want to cut my finger every week, but my lifestyle with a family of 2 children and a husband, we have things. I'm not giving up crisps. Some people do, but crisp packets you can't recycle for the moment, but I'm not giving those up. But there are some things, but now our benchmark is around about 95%. Now we've had lots of people take this and they are actually getting similar results too, even in areas where you can't recycle that many plastics. People are looking at that target and they're getting down to around about 50%, which still is a really, really good benchmark. Imagine if all those bins in the country suddenly reduced their waste within the next 4 weeks by 50%. That would probably soon get us up to the 50% target that the country needs by 2020. But what we've actually discovered as well as using your bin to reinvigorate and revolutionise the future of this material getting back into the economy and cutting down our carbon, we've discovered that people have developed a sense of real happiness about doing it, happiness that they'd never discovered before. And so much of the feedback really does come through. And I'd like to just end this on the words of Graham Heap. Most people, I think, end with philosophers, but I think what Graham Heap has got to say actually sums up the motivation. And that's, with referring to the bin, when you lift it up to see such a little bag after 2 weeks, it's absolutely a joy. I never ever thought that the size of my rubbish bags would put a smile on my face. I can tell you, they started with 2 full wheelie bins every fortnight. This family were brilliant. Thank you.